All right. Well, good afternoon, North Carolina. Sure your weather is as pretty as it is down here in Tampa, Florida. So I'm hoping we're enjoying at least the sunshine and not too much rain. This particular session, we're going to cover some of that modern experience within your SharePoint Online Microsoft 365 environment. Before I start, give you a little bit about me. My name there is Greg. I'm originally born in Brooklyn, New York. I love New York City. I can go back and visit. It's just, I would never go and live there again. I follow all my sports teams out of New York, but like I said, I like suburbia. I like having my house, my yard, my driveway, my own little walkway, and not having to worry about other people out in front of my house all the time. I have a lot of experience in Microsoft 365 environment. SharePoint is my go-to. I have been doing SharePoint since the beginning of SharePoint, since 2001 when Microsoft launched it as Team Services. I started using SharePoint back then, and I've done every single version, including, the last few years focusing on the SharePoint Online. I do have pretty extensive experience with Microsoft Teams and just about everything with regards to OneDrive. Been with Microsoft for almost 5 years now. Can't wait for the next 5, see how things are going. Okay, well, fun fact, that little picture about me, because you're probably wondering, what is that Greg guy doing in this picture? I am a part-time Zumba instructor. I've been teaching Zumba for the past 12 years. So just a little fun fact about myself so you get to know who I am. All right, so we're going to kind of jump right into what is it that we're looking for, or what are the business needs when someone says, hey, IT, we need an intranet. Okay, some of the things we're looking at, and I'm going to promise you right now, here's my quick disclaimer. A wall of words I will never read to you. So by now you have already read a good majority of those bullets and kind of understand these are what the business units are saying they need. I need an intranet with the content very well organized. I need it accessible from a mobile device. Is it good value for what we're paying for it? Those types of things. And we don't always have to depend on IT. The Microsoft 365 collaboration platform is about empowering our users. I've had many, many conversations with SharePoint admins that have been doing SharePoint forever, and it is a hard thing to kind of let go and empower our users to do things, but it is that paradigm shift now. We're swinging on that pendulum and saying, hey, you know what? You don't need IT to do this and that and this and that. You guys can do a lot of the things yourselves, and that's what the real beauty of the Microsoft 365 platform is. So we understand what the business needs are, but what would make that intranet a success? Can I get to things quickly? Does a link that says, hey, submit a help desk ticket, take me to a form to fill out to submit a help desk ticket? Or is it a link that takes me to the IT page where I got to find another button that says submit the form? Those are the types of things that we're looking for when we're looking at designing a successful intranet. We want these things to really deliver on the promise. Okay. But I will tell you, with Microsoft 365, we do have two types of environments. We have the classic SharePoint and we have the modern SharePoint. Guys, I'm going to tell you, I've worked extensively with Rodney and Karen and Michelle in the North Carolina Department of IT folks that the decision was made to no longer allow classic sites in SharePoint Online. I'll demonstrate a little bit later on what a classic site is, just so you kind of get an understanding of what that means. As you see in that last bullet there, Microsoft is not doing anything to make it any better right now. Those classic sites, they just work, but they won't have all the bells and the whistles that your modern SharePoint sites will now have. So as you see, we're going to eventually turn that capability off. So the easiest thing to remember, and this is kind of when I work with all the engineers and different admins in different places, is, hey, just avoid classic. Like classic has COVID. It's a simple analogy. Just avoid it at all costs because it does bring no benefit to you all as the users of SharePoint with regards to, hey, what can I do in SharePoint? Well, classic is really, really limited. Now you're going to see a word in here in the modern tab over here. It says it's responsive for different sizes. And I'll explain that to you when I do a little bit of a demonstration for you a little bit later on as well. Okay, but it's definitely where Microsoft is investing heavily to make sure these modern sites, these modern pages have this functionality, the new bells and whistles that are available to you. So that's why the state of North Carolina has said, hey, you know what? We're going to just stay completely away from classic and focus primarily everyone on a modern SharePoint site. Now, being that we do have the two types, we have the classic and modern, but within that modern environment, we also have two templates to choose from. There is a communication site and there is a team site. So why don't we talk a little bit about what are the differences here? In a communication site, the simplest way for me to put it into terms that I think everyone can understand, a communication site is really used to showcase your work. Okay, a communication site by default also is, like you see in the bottom, it's accessible by default. That means everyone in the state of North Carolina, excuse me, I'm fighting a cold, my apologies. Everyone in the state of North Carolina has access to that site. And when I say everyone, I'm talking about every state employee or contractor. I'm not talking, Sally Q resident or John Q voter. Okay, but folks that have government email addresses for the state of North Carolina, they are able to access that site without saying, can I please have access to your site? So communication site is a great site to put something that everyone needs to see. Something, a good example would be maybe HR, right? Everybody in the state needs to get to HR to understand benefits and payroll and promotions and all that kind of neat stuff. That you shouldn't have to go, can I please have access? Should be a site you should be able to access without requesting permission, okay? So on this other spectrum of that is we have the team site template. The team site template in the simplest of terms is, hey, that's the team you work with. If we were all back in the office, sitting in our cubicle havens, those guys and gals that you can hear them speaking, you can hand them a lollipop or share a pencil, that's your team. That is a perfect example of a team site. And as you can see on that last bullet there, it's not intended for a broad audience. It's just our team. We're where we do the work. Remember, I said the communication site is where you showcase your work. The team site is where you do the work. Okay, working on things like projects and timelines on certain things that not everyone in the whole entire state needs to be able to get in and see and collaborate. So definitely there's a difference between the communication site, open to everyone, team site, just for us, the guys and gals that you work with on a daily basis. Okay. Now, we're talking about sites. Some of you may have enough SharePoint experience that you also remember subsites or child sites, subsites. You remember working in SharePoint and building sites that had a top level site, and then, let's call it a department. So we have a department site, and underneath that we would have child sites for the different branches within that department. And maybe even some below that where we can take it down to, to the different teams. That hierarchy structure of site building is a thing of the past. We really, as Microsoft, we encourage and strongly encourage folks to get away from that process. In the state of North Carolina, we've disabled the capabilities to build subsites or child sites because we just don't want problems when, for example, if we needed to do a restore. So looking at this little image that you have on your screen, remember I was mentioning HR is a great communication site because everybody needs to get to it. Okay, and then maybe we have a site for pay for benefits and pay and compensation. These are all great, but imagine if all of these were subsites to the HR in that hierarchy or org structure format. So we have a top level of HR with all of these being subsites. If something were to happen let's say inadvertently somebody in performance management uploaded a file with some malware and all their data in this particular child site or subsite gets corrupted. Well, you contact Microsoft. Microsoft does a restore. But what we do is we restore the site collection. So every site in here, all 7, 8 sites are going to lose a half a day to a day's worth of data only because this one site had inadvertently uploaded something with malware. That could be avoided if everything is its own site. That's the push that your North Carolina Department of IT is really encouraging everybody. Hey, we're not doing subsites. Everything is its own site collection. And guys and gals, I'm telling you, we've all lived through it at least once or many times. Reorgs. Reorgs also happen when a reorganization happens and a team or a department or a branch or whatever gets moved from one section to another. It's really, really difficult to maintain version history and all the metadata associated to those files when you have to move them from one site to another. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about what are called hub sites as we continue on with our presentation here. But what we're trying to do is just get away from that stacking of, the pyramid stacking of sites. So that's why the state of North Carolina said, hey, we're just not gonna build them. We're gonna turn that off. And they did. They turned it off for the tenant, saying, hey, that's it. This is how we're gonna go. We're gonna go flat. Microsoft recommends it. And Greg explained why. And this is a really good idea. We're gonna go flat. Okay. So I kind of alluded to a hub site. Now, we all have heard of hubs like, for example, Atlanta, really big hub. If you fly from Delta, you're going through Atlanta no matter what if you're on the East Coast. It's a big hub because from Atlanta, we can get to everywhere. Same concept when it comes to SharePoint. We can have a hub site that has associated sites, meaning going back to that image earlier where I had the HR hub in the middle and there was payroll and benefits and team acquisition, those kind of associated sites, they're all related to HR. So if I land on the HR site and I'm like, hey, and I just do a quick search, hey, I'm searching for benefits or payroll, it's going to find that information first because it is associated to that site. Okay, so a hub site allows us to not only just associate like data, but it also gives us ability to when here it says discover content, for example, maybe it's that time of year to renew your benefits, and the benefits department puts out a news article on their site that they have access to write on that says, hey, don't forget to renew your benefits by 31 July. Well, at the HR hub site, it can feed that information up to the main HR site. So folks don't actually even have to go to the benefits site. Here's a news article from benefits that says we got to renew our benefits by 31 July. Awesome. Okay. So the modern hub site is kind of like a spoken hub, kind of like you're looking at this wheel here, that this would be our hub. And at the end of each one of these spokes is an associated site. Every tenant, which means that the state of North Carolina is a single tenant that can have up to 2,000 hub sites. And each one of those 2,000 hub sites can have 2,500 associated sites. I can't do the math right off the top of my head, but that's a whole lot more sites than you currently have anyway. But just to kind of give you an idea where we can get like-minded information, IT is another great example for a hub site. I need to get to the IT webpage because I got to know how to do a ticket. I need to look up how-to documents, or are there some tutorial information on this or that? Get all those IT sites that are related to it that I can find information. So IT is a site that everyone in the company or in the state would need to access. Now, a couple of things we'd like to discuss also when you are given a site. Is somebody off of mute? Christina, I'm going to mute you. There we go. So sorry, Christina, Miss Bernadette, your mic was hot and I just wanted to mute you because I can hear your background. So sorry. Okay. So one of the things we really want to focus on is when you have your site, I want to show you some really good design practices. When you are building your site, keep in mind, for example, this very first thing we're going to talk about is how do we as human beings read websites? Studies were shown and eye movement was caught. And it's actually true if you hear what we're going to talk about. So how do we as human beings, how do we read a website? Well, take a look at this. This was and you can kind of see the picture back here with just a wall of words. As human beings, we're going to start reading and then we're going to get less and less and less. And it kind of starts to emulate the F. Notice how it comes across. So I'm going to read a good much. Now I'm just going to start skimming. That is what we're trying to get away from. Because the Nielsen Group, as you can see, and it was years ago that they did this study that when you make a page or a site that just a ton of content, users are not going to read every word. They're really just skimming to see what's important to them and then read that part. So kind of keep that in mind when you personally are designing your SharePoint sites. Okay, so we already know now that the F shape is considered bad practice. Okay, we don't want to throw 5,300 words up on a page just because, hey, users are not going to sit there and read it all. Maybe we put some teaser and have them come in if they want to read the whole 5,300 word article. Awesome. But we're not going to throw up our main page with 5,300 and links all over the place. That would make our users not want to visit our site. Okay. So some of the things that we like that, is within Microsoft, we have a lot of options here, or excuse me, within SharePoint, you have a lot of options to make sure your users are going to read things. I mean, some of the, as you can see on here, using bullets. Hey, that's fantastic. It's a quick way to say, or it might even be a link. Hey, read this particular article because it's really cool news. Oh, okay. Click that. Then they're going to read, whatever it is that you have behind it, but capture their attention using things like, the bullets and numbers or bolding, even something simple as putting a bold set of letters. Okay. All of that is what helps you design when you start building out your SharePoint sites, when you start building out your pages and links, and keeping in mind, Greg said we don't want to put an entire wall of words on our main page. So let's get away from that F-shaped pattern by putting some bullets. What's also really neat is that our templates, okay, remember we mentioned the two templates, there's a communication site template and your team site template. They reduce almost completely that F-shaped pattern. Look at these two examples here. These are both. Is somebody else off of mute? Somebody have a question? Okay. So sorry, thought I heard someone again. All right, so your communication site, these are two of the templates. There's a third template, but the third template is a blank. I'm not going to put a picture up of a blank website. It's just a canvas, it lets you do and design it however you want. But taking a look at these two different templates, your topic and your showcase templates. This is neat. These are pictures. They could be pictures. It could be just a link to an article or to a PowerPoint or to a Word document. Very eye-catching. Let me zoom in actually a little bit too. So let's kind of zoom in a little bit here. Okay, next thing we got a news section. Hey, the top 4 news articles, very cool. I'm not reading the whole article. I can read those headlines and see what interests me, and should I go read that? Maybe a schedule of events. We got this product launch is happening this day, or we have a ribbon cutting ceremony, or the CEO is getting ready to retire. Lots of different options. Of course, we can also even showcase documents. Hey, these are the most recent documents that have been edited, in our site. You can highlight content just like that as well. And then over here, as you can see, notice how we don't have a wall of words. Actually, it's taking us right to left to right. So we can view just a couple of words, a nice little layout. And this, by the way, is out of the box. You do not have to modify anything. Yeah, yes, of course, this isn't a picture of your office and these aren't articles about your specific environment. You edit that information, but the layout is pre-built for you. Okay, so speaking of layouts are also extremely important. Why? Because it's what helps keep your users interested, engaged, as well as when it comes to looking at this website on a different device. We're not always going to grab that website and look at it on our laptop or our desktop. Sometimes we may, our laptop could die. We snag our tablet. Now we're looking at it on a smaller, or now my tablet dies and I go to my cell phone. Now I'm looking at it even smaller. So there are some things to consider when you're designing your sites. Okay. And here's some really cool things. There's the grid versus a film strip. Now, I know I'm putting out some technical Microsoft terms, and I'm going to explain what they all are. But notice what it says. They're both similar. They use cards to show that content, but they also show how they differ when you're looking at the page on different pixel sizes. We'll cover that here in a little bit. So here's a quick example of what a grid layout looks. So this first top one we're looking at right here. Let's say this is just a document library web part, and it's showing the 4 documents. All right, cool. Maybe I don't have my browser fully maximized, so I reduced it a little bit so I can kind of see what's my email in the background. So because I went from unmaximized, it went now 3 across and 1. And let's say my laptop dies and now I'm looking at it on my tablet. It automatically aligns based on the pixels that's accessing it. And then let's say my tablet dies and I finally go down to my mobile device, my cell phone. All 4 documents are still visible. They're just in a nice single row, or excuse me, column. Here's your single row, and it goes down to a column. And I'll show you how that works dynamically as well, based on the sizes of your pixels that's accessing the website. Okay. So this is the grid layout. Notice that it does not hide anything. Excuse me. That's where the film strip comes into play. And you've probably seen this many times. So looking at this top example here, here's that same document library with the 4 documents. But then I go down to my mobile device and, hey, I'm only looking at 2. But notice you got those little dots. Those little dots allow you to run through the carousel and scroll through all 4 of the documents so you can still see them. So that's the difference between the carousel, the grid and the film strip. The grid still showed them all. The film strip says, oh, we're getting smaller. I'm going to show you what I can show you on this particular screen that's accessing it based on its pixel size, but I'll allow you to scroll through to still see that information. It's not really hiding them. It's just putting them behind that carousel. So grid and film strip. Now we also have another option called a list layout. It's exactly what it sounds, guys. It's just a list. Here I'm looking at those 4 documents, but instead of looking at them in a document preview type of option, I'm looking at them in a list format. Simple, but this also adjusts to the number of pixels that's accessing it. I know I'm talking about pixels. I'm talking about on your screen, every little box is a square, and you can't really see it, but I'll explain a little more later on as we go through the rest of the slides. There's also an option from list that we can go to what's called compact. So this compact view, notice what it shows here. We're looking at the calendar of events here. We're showing 4 different events in a nice compact view. It's not showing too much data. It's giving you the date, what's the title, and the time. Just enough information to say, oh, that interests me, or that's not applicable to me. It also shows in here that it works best in the 1/3 column. And I'll show you the difference between that 1/3 column and sections a little bit later on as well. Now, if anybody on the call has ever been to MSN.com, Microsoft Network, it is this, one of those is using the carousel for all the news. Just about every site you get to, and if you just want to, you scroll through that little carousel to read the article that interests you. Okay, that's what the carousels will do for you in your layouts when you're looking at designing your SharePoint pages. Okay. Now, I did mention what's called responsive design, right? That responsive design, it means it's based on the number of pixels that's accessing that site. So one example that I have, and I did bring up, I have a site here. I built this as a team site here for in my demo tenant. Okay, this is not on the North Carolina's tenant, but just on mine. Microsoft gave me one to play with. And so what we're looking at on this particular site is a normal default out of the box team site template. By the way, a little fun fact here on this. Are you guys able to see my web page? Let me make sure. Karen?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Excuse me. So this web page, I'm looking at it in a normal layout on a regular screen on my desktop. As you notice, if I stretch it, it just kind of moves a little bit. But now let's say my desktop dies and I have to move from my desktop. As you can see how it's nice and aligned here. So I got three things over here. I've got the quick launch left navigation over here. But now my desktop dies and I need to grab my tablet. So I'm going to go to a tablet size. Now notice what kind of happened. Everything shifted. That is the responsive design that Microsoft has built into it. So regardless of what size of a screen that I'm using, whether it's my desktop or a tablet or a phone, it will automatically adjust and put everything in a nice little readable format. Now my tablet also dies. I have to switch down to my cell phone. That's as small as I can make that window. Now, notice what also happened. I'm going to undo that very quickly, just for a little bit. Notice what happens to my quick launch or my left navigation once I go from tablet size to cell phone size. It compacts and hides itself in what we lovingly and affectionately call the hamburger menu. You've probably seen that as well on, any mobile site that you're looking at on your phone. But notice everything else also shifted into one nice single column. That's that responsive design, which, by the way, you do not get with the classic sites. That's a big reason why, your Department of IT is saying, we're just not going to do classic. We'll just say classic has COVID and we're all avoiding it because, hey, nobody wants COVID anymore, right? So some kind of things to consider as we go through here with regards to the different designs when you're building out your SharePoint sites, okay? We knew when we started designing SharePoint Online, excuse me, with that responsive design, is we understand that this can go from a desktop to a phone just like that. Hey, we're in a meeting. Hey, let's walk. Just let me access that site while I'm walking and talking with you. That kind of instant access and responsive design to the size of pixels that's accessing is what Microsoft knew. We have to make this. Just for your own edification also is the screen size can go as small, and yes, you're probably going to chuckle, but it can go as small as an iPhone 5, which is only 320 pixels wide. It's really, really small. But yes, even an iPhone 5 can see your SharePoint Online nice and cleanly. All right. What's really cool, though, is when you're designing your pages, you have the ability to design it how you see fit. Okay. As you notice on bullet number 1, each page can have its own set of rules, meaning, hey, maybe I want this page to have 3 columns at the top, 1 underneath that, 2 underneath that, 1 again, and then 3. You can have multiple sections to fit your design however you want it. And those pages will automatically adjust to the size of the device that's looking at it. Okay. So it says here, SharePoint Desktop is the 12-column structure. That's a little more for our developers who are developing SharePoint apps, plugins, add-ins, and so forth. They need to know that when they're designing those SharePoint apps and so forth, that they're staying within that 12-column structure as well. Because some of those pages, some of the devices have what's called a gutter, and they got to make sure that when they're designing these responsive web parts and stuff for your particular environment, they need to ensure that they are cognizant of the gutter widths and so forth. So looking at a team site, which we kind of just, I showed you on my other screen there, we were going through that. You notice that you have your quick launch. It says that content is locked on the left-hand side, and it sure is. Because notice, even if I took the page and I shifted left or I shifted right, it still stays kind of plugged to the left. Of course, when I got really small, then what was really nice is your quick launch or left navigation automatically hides for you and compacts into that little hamburger menu so you can still access those links. Okay? Your communication sites, as you can see, they're a little bit different layout. Notice how here's your team site. Most everything's kind of focused on the left. With your communication sites, the focus is more on the center of the page. I want to see the navigation is going to be more across the top. My meat and potatoes of those sites and those pages is going to be right smack dab in the middle so everyone can see. But as you can see, it also has to comply with, this is the size of an iPhone 5, 320 pixels, all the way up to 1204 pixels, which is pretty darn ginormous. Some device considerations, Meryl's mentioning that iPhone 5 is right here. That's at 320 pixels wide. That is what's your minimum width for your developers when they're designing sites and web apps and add-ins and so forth that they need to comply with. Okay. Now, I do want to take a quick moment to go through my SharePoint site. All right, I don't want to bore you guys with a bunch of PowerPoint because that's just boring. What I do want to do is go through my site here and just kind of show you some other things. Okay, so we've already seen what the responsive design is. It automatically adjusts to whatever pixels it's accessing it. That's great. But out of the box, you also have the ability to apply templates. If you're a site owner, maybe this generic look and feel is just kind of, I see it, Greg, but it bores me. Well, what's really neat is you also have the option. Some of these are pre-built by Microsoft, and the state could possibly build if, like, for example, I have some here, but if the state built some different templates, they can make them available for you here. But what I want to do is take a quick moment to kind of show you some of these templates. For example, there's a crisis communication team. This was a great site template for when COVID-19 first really hit. We got all hands on deck. We need to keep a track of everything related. Good example, but let's use maybe this one. The IT help desk is a good example. What's really neat is if I click on here, is this site is actually going to transform to exactly what you're looking at over here. It's going to say, welcome to the IT. It's going to have these pictures. And of course, these are not linked to real articles inside of your environment, but that's okay. Hey, there's that button, create a new ticket. Awesome. What's really neat is I can say, click, and it takes about maybe a minute, and it will automatically refresh this site, as you can see it back here, and change and apply that template. I didn't have to have a developer design it for me. I may like the look and feel, but there may be some things I'm going to change. Boom, my site now has that new template assigned to it. And notice, hey, I can submit a new ticket, which, it takes me to it also built a list. For example, I can submit a new ticket. It's going to take me to, hey, right here, I can start adding new items. What's the problem? Give me some issues, et cetera, all because I selected that one template. Now, does that mean you have to use that template? No, I mean, you could try other ones to see which one fits your needs best. But that's a pretty neat way to take that out-of-the-box template, which is great, and make it even better. So notice what it has done is it's given me a 3 tile here. This is what's called a hero web part. Okay, I've got some buttons up here that's going to take me to different places. We can chat. That's not quite available right now, but we do have some training articles. We have some FAQs. We have some events. Nothing that's actually happening, but hey, here's the staff. Meet the staff. Obviously, you would need to update this with your folks in your environment, but that template is built right out of the box without you all having to really engage with the IT staff or to hire a developer to say, hey, we need this to look really cool. This template is pretty cool, right, as it is out of the box. And this is still the team site template, because notice my address is team site. But notice what it also did is it took my left navigation and put it on the top. I didn't have to design any of that. I just applied that template. Bingo, it automatically did it for me. Now, your communication sites also has the same capability. This is a communication site template. Notice, as you can see, the 5 tiles up here in the hero web part, the news articles that, may be of interest, some events. this is just out of the box. But maybe I want to change it to a different template. I want to see what else we have. What's available for us? Well, we already did the IT, but notice it's not even listed in here. This is giving me different examples. So maybe I'm looking for, hey, a volunteer program or the Learning Central. I think you guys called it Knowledge College or the Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways. Good template to use. Let's try using this one here. Let's take a peek. See. And this is what it's going to end up looking like. It'll have this nice purple, which is quite bright in my opinion. And it'll have your 5 tiles up there. It'll have some sample buttons in here, a nice little article right there, a couple. That's pretty neat little article, and it sticks in a nice little footer. Maybe purple's too bright for me, Greg. I don't like that one. Okay, fine. Let's pick a different one. Let's look at this department one. How does that look? Here's our new marketing officer. We've got some buttons in there, a document library, some news. It's pretty straightforward, but nothing that wows me. One more option. Let's see what else we have. Let's go with the organization home. How does this look? Oh, I like this one. I've got time clocks for different time zones should I need it as well. Pretty nice little layout. It's got some, it's pulling in Yammer feeds. Oh, sure, let's do that. That's going to redo my site all within less than a minute. And once again, I didn't have to hire a developer to come in and do things for me. Just selecting the template out of the box. We'll count this down, give it about another 10 seconds or so. So what I'm just showing you right now is just something really basic to apply a template to your site. Very, very easy to do, and it's already built in for me. Now, am I satisfied with that? What if I need to do more, Greg? I need to add a page for this, need to add a page for that. Fantastic, then let's do it. Both options, okay, whether we're on the team site, I have the option to say new page, or on the communication side, I say new page. Either one, it's going to give me an option of how do I want. Do I want a blank page, start from scratch, or do I want to have a nice, excuse me, example layout here? Oops, that does not scroll. Or here with some basic text. That one looks pretty neat. I can just say, oh, fairly new, excuse me, fairly new feature is this creating a private draft. Last thing you want is, if you're the owner of this site, you're building pages and it's kind of under construction. You don't want people coming in saying, oh, why does this look like that? Oh, because I'm in the middle of editing, but I had a couple of Teams meetings. I couldn't get back to it. Hey, why don't you create yourself a private draft, and when it's done and ready, then you can publish it. Well, for today's purpose, we're just going to create a blank page, or excuse me, the basic text page out of the box. So I now have a basic page here that I can say, this is my state of North Carolina, site, new page. Okay, fairly easy. I just type. Every one of these is just editable text. I can delete it. I can highlight it. I can, just like you can with Word, I can make it, I can highlight certain things. I can make the rest of this italicized. As you can see, it's just like using Word. It's very, very easy. Now, also, what I want to show you guys is that this page is set up in what's called sections. See these little pluses over here? And it says I can add a new section, or I can edit this section. So let me show you what we do when we edit the section. Right now it's in 2 columns. Remember earlier we were talking about that list layout, which is perfect for a 1/3. Notice how that automatically shifted. Or maybe I want 3 columns. I don't know what I'm going to stick over here, but I'm going to put something else in. This is a huge improvement to SharePoint on-premises. Your SharePoint on-prem did not allow you to have that capability. Once you design a page with, let's say, 3 columns, it was going to stay 3 columns. You couldn't adjust it. That stinks. To add another web part, I go into the section, I click a little plus, and then I have lots of options. I can stick in the group calendar, a picture, a divider, another hero web part. Lots of pretty cool things. Hey, I can link to a YouTube video, files and media, maybe the document library. Maybe I want this in here, okay? Then it's going to ask me, which document library do I want? I want the document library. As you can see, mine is empty because I just built this template today. But notice what you can do. You can even filter out, say, hey, just show like the last 5 items, or 15, or all 30, and so forth. So it's pretty pretty cool. You can even go into subfolders if you had additional folders built within that document library. One final thing that I want to show you with regards to sections. So if I edit this section, oh, I'm already in edit mode. I have an option here that says make this section collapsible. Huh. Okay, let's do that. Notice what it did is it gave me this little, I think they call it a carrot, but I want to give this section a name. So, yeah, good reading info. Now, if I'm comfortable with it, I'll publish the page. And as your users begin to read, they can also say, "Poop, I'm just going to hide that because I've already read it." Notice that? It's a very easy way to make this section collapsible and hide it or display it. So big fan of the collapsible sections with regards to, hey, pixel real estate is really important nowadays. Last thing you want is someone having to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll until they finally get to the bottom. Hey man, put in these collapsible sections, let them shrink them down to and only expand what they really want to see. Okay? Same thing with your team site. You have the same options. I can choose this visual instead of the basic text. Gives me a nice little template out of the box. State of North Carolina team site page. And simple enough, same thing. Once again, if I don't like this section, I can edit this particular section here and say, hey, you know what? I want 3 columns and I'm going to put something else inside of here. I'm going to stick in a YouTube video. I may not have one right now, but I can go out to YouTube and get a video, YouTube, and we'll pick a video, whatever video that is. And then I'm going to come back here and paste it in. And bazinga, I now have that YouTube video. I can add a caption, you know, players try to impress fans, whatever. Oh, what's also neat is you have the ability with your YouTube web part. Notice sometimes you've ever gone to those videos that start after about 8 seconds of hey, welcome to my channel. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about it. I don't want to hear all of that, and neither does everybody else. Get me to the real good stuff that I need to follow, and I can say, okay, start at 8 seconds later. Okay. And then I can publish it. I've built these pages, and these pages also, by the way, are 100% responsive based on the pixel real estate. See, everything is still there. It's just in a nice single column. All right, I kind of went through a good amount of information. I think Karen had told us we had about 50 minutes and hopefully allow for any Q&A. So do we have questions, Karen? I wasn't monitoring the chat.
Yeah, we've got a few, and I've been answering some here and there along the way.
Awesome.
Let's go back and see. Well, first off, are you going to give us your slide deck? Will that be available?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I like that Stephanie likes Zumba. That's cool. Come take my class. If you're ever down in Tampa, come take my class, man. I promise to make you sweat. Get a good
here's
workout.
a good one. Can you swap templates if you've created the content?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So here, like, for example, you know, remember I added this here, should be able to still go in and say, hey, I'm going to change my template to, I forget which one I had. Let's go employee onboarding, use my template, and my data should also still stay. It's just giving me options to try one, try another. Now, give me a second here. This should come back with my YouTube video because I think that's the only thing I added on this particular page. And oh no, it sure didn't. It takes my content out. I had forgotten that. So no, if you put your content and then apply a template, you're going to lose your info. So choose a template first, then add your content.
All right. Stephanie Edwards is asking, how do we link various separate sites to a central hub site? And Greg, I believe that's something we have to do on our end. We have to go into the admin portal and associate a site with a hub.
So Karen, you and Michelle and Rodney, you guys had the ability to create or promote a site, register it as a hub site, but the site owners themselves have the ability to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go into site information here, and I'm going to associate with, I built a hub site in my environment for when I was doing something for Home Depot. So now I'm going to say, I'm going to associate to the My Apron hub site. I'm going to click save. And what's going to happen is across the top here, oh, come on, do it again. I don't know why it does that every now and then. Now it changed to, because obviously Home Depot is all orange, right? I still have my template, but I also have the Home Depot navigation. So owners can link or unlink from a hub site at any given moment. I can undo it as well. I'll say, hey, you know what? I didn't mean to go to that hub site. I just want to pick none. And then I'll save it and it will revert. Now it keeps the color because that's what it last remembered. But notice I no longer am associated. So that means I also don't have the navigation from that particular site, from that different hub site, excuse me.
All right. Let's see what else we've got. We have a question about Council of Governments for how do they get a SharePoint site for, and I think we'll have to go back and answer this ourselves. Any other questions for Greg?
I see like there's an option that says, what is the easiest way to get analytics on SharePoint? Okay, very, very good question. But I will tell you guys, depending on the depth of analytics that you're looking for, Microsoft is not in the business of web trends. Okay, but it does give you the options to see who, what is, oh, sorry, right here, analytics. I click on that analytics, whether I'm on the team side, the communication side. Obviously, I just built these sites, so there's probably nothing in there. So let's go to this other site. I may be able to get some analytics here. All right. That type of basic and generic analytics you can get just by the click of a button. Okay. Now, obviously, my tenant doesn't have users. The user is me. I'm the every user. So looks like the last time I was really heavy on it was last Friday. I did some stuff here for a little bit, and that was it. In the last 7, 30, or 90 days, I can still go back and look. Oops. But it's not, like I said, if you're looking for real web trend analytics, that's not what Microsoft is in the business for. You'd have to purchase some additional software for that type of analytics.
So when switching between templates, can you go back to the original?
No. So you can go in here when you click on the apply the site template. I'm sorry, not there. In site information, you could see the template history. What happens is, unfortunately, we don't have a rollback option. I think as SharePoint admins, we may be able to do it via some PowerShell, but don't quote me on that one.
Well, we're at 2:50. We're out of time. However, this is the last session of the day. Do we have any other questions? Anything regarding SharePoint intranets for Greg Rojas? Yeah, thank you, Greg. You did a great job. This is one of my favorite subjects. I love SharePoint. So I really appreciate Greg's presentation today.
I enjoy passing on information. I really, really do. And guys, I will say, Linda, I see your hand is up. Yes, Linda, what's up?
Sorry, that was a mistake.
Oh, well, at least I got to say hi.
That was a great presentation.
Thank you. And guys, I will tell you the most valuable gift that you can give to me was your time today, because it's a gift that I cannot give back to you. So I only hope that I've earned the privilege of your time for the last 50 or so minutes. So thank you so much for letting me be here.